This week's blog post is my favorite recommendations from 2022, Part 3. In 2022, I emailed 158 art-related items to members of my Free Sunday recommendations list. For supporters, I recommended 52 more items. This week, I'm showing you favorite museums plus architecture. 2 of the architecture recommendations were originally shared only with supporters, so starting with museums. For me, there's an excitement in going to a museum whose holdings include figurative painting and sculpture. I never know what may be around the next corner. This year I posted on 5 museums and exhibitions, and I'm including some of my favorite pictures in this blog. I also visited the Imagine Museum in St. Pete, which is glassworking. You can see a couple photos from that in my post on favorite photos of 2022. These images are from the Florence Griswold Museum in Old Lyme, Connecticut. It includes works by American artists of around 1900 to the 1920s. These are from the St. Gaudens National Historical Park in Cornish, New Hampshire, which is the home and studio of one of America's greatest sculptors who lived 1848 to 1907. These are from the James Museum of Western and Wildlife Art in St. Petersburg, Florida, which is just what you'd guess from the title. It was established in 2018 by Tom and Mary James, who are still purchasing works for it. This is from an exhibition on N.C. Wyeth, who was one of the great American illustrators. His dates are 1882 to 1945. These photos were taken at an exhibition at the Brandywine Museum in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania in 2019. And these, finally, are from an exhibition of works by J.C. Leyendecker, who was another great American illustrator. His dates are 1874 to 1951. This exhibition was held at Reynolda House in Winston-Salem, North Carolina in 2019. Moving on to architecture, there are 2 works tied for first. This is Louis Sullivan's Carson Pirie Scott Building, finished in 1899. Located at 1 South State Street, Chicago, this building is notable for its use of steel framing, for the first use of the huge windows we associate with department stores, and for the exuberant decoration, which is based on plant motifs but goes gorgeously beyond them. It was commissioned from Sullivan by Schlesinger and Meyer, and went through 2 other owners before being leased to Carson Pirie Scott, who occupied it until 2006. The building is now known as the Sullivan Center. Target occupies part of it, so you can still get in. And the other work that's tied for first in architecture is Shreve Lamb and Harmon's Empire State Building, completed 1931. At 102 stories, 1,454 feet, this gorgeous Art Deco building was completed in just over 13 months. Like many skyscrapers of the period, the Chrysler Building and 88 Pine Street come to mind. The Empire State Building has an image of itself at ground level, in this case an aluminum relief in the lobby. It was the world's tallest building for 40 years until the World Trade Center was completed in 1970. After the towers fell, it was New York City's tallest building until 2012. The section in Wikipedia on the development and use of the Empire State Building's lights is a slice of American history. We're on to runners-up now. There are 3 of these. This is the library at Admont Abbey in Austria. It was begun in 1742. The largest monastic library in the world was constructed during the Enlightenment in the Baroque Rococo style. I defy you to think ascetic thoughts beneath its fabulously frescoed domes or beside its curving shelves. This does not look at all like a building that Howard Rourke would have designed. However, if you think of libraries as places where you can find the most amazing things, this kind of works. Also a runner-up is Victor Horta's Hotel Tassel in Brussels, Belgium, 1893. The Tassel House was built by Victor Horta for Émile Tassel, scientist and professor. The first complete building in the Art Nouveau style, it has several unique features. First, most Brussels homes of this period were on narrow, deep sites, laid out with a hallway that led to 3 rooms, the middle of which had no natural lighting. I've been in Brooklyn houses of the same period with exactly that layout. Horta laid out a floor plan that incorporated 2 buildings of stone, one facing the street, one facing the garden. They were linked by a wide-open room in the center that was sheltered with a glass-covered steel roof so that it functioned as a light shaft, and also a very large space for entertaining. Horta also created every detail of the interior design of Tassel House. Rather than using historical styles, as most Americans were doing when they built their Gilded Age mansions at this time, Horta designed all the interior elements in the Art Nouveau style with the characteristic whiplash curves. You can see them on the stair rails and the floor mosaics. And the third architectural runner-up is Saarinen's TWA Flight Center at JFK Airport, completed in 1962. After World War II, TWA became a key player in making airline travel affordable to the masses. In New York City, the Port Authority expanded Idlewild Airport, later renamed JFK, and called for each airline to build and operate its own terminal. Saarinen was commissioned to capture the spirit of flight for TWA's site. The TWA building is a pioneering example of thin shell construction. Its 4 shell-shaped segments meeting at the center use reinforced concrete that ranges from 7 to 40 inches thick to span a huge space. In the interior, swooping curves make ceilings run into walls and floors, while huge windows allow travelers to watch the airport's activity. This was Saarinen's last project. He died in 1961 when only the exterior had been completed. The terminal was designed in the age of propeller-driven planes. When jets supplanted them, it became far less useful as a terminal, and it was finally shut down in 2001. But in 2019, the renovated retro TWA building reopened as part of the first on-site hotel at JFK, with 500 rooms, multiple restaurants, an observation deck, and conference space. And just an addendum, while checking out the cruising speed of planes in the 1950s for one of the installments of the timeline, which I'll come to in a moment, I came across this delightful piece of trivia on the Lockheed Constellation, one of the workhorses of airlines in that decade, the 1950s. Quoting from Wikipedia, "Sleek and powerful, the Constellations set many records. On April 17, 1944, the second production C-69, piloted by Howard Hughes and TWA President Jack Fry, flew from Burbank, California to Washington, D.C. in 6 hours and 57 minutes, at an average of 331 miles per hour. On the return trip, the aircraft stopped at Wright Field in Ohio to give Orville Wright his last flight, more than 40 years after his historic first flight near Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. He commented that the Constellation's wingspan was longer than the distance of his first flight." And just wrapping up, in 1922 I published 3 books. The one on the left is Starry Solitudes, a collection of 98 poems that I've recommended over the past 5 years. The one in the center is Sunny Sundays, which includes highlights of 5 years of Sunday recommendations. And the one on the right is the timeline for 1900-2021, events worldwide, U.S. politics and culture, economics, science and technology, books, visual arts, architecture, film and TV, and music. For more of my writings, you can see the Books and Essays page on my website. DianeDuranteWriter.com has hundreds of posts on sculpture, painting, architecture, and my other obsessions. To join the Sunday Recommendations email list, visit the URL that's on the screen or just email me. And you can say, "Well done, Diane," or support my work and receive rewards by means of the tip jar on DianeDuranteWriter.com. As always, thank you for listening.